Hi, I'm Professor Green, and today we'll be talking about Chapter 8, Foreign Direct Investment. And there are a handful of key learning objectives. One of my favorite chapters is Chapter 8 because it talks a lot about why companies would invest in other companies and the importance of that. And I know from personal experience that a lot of research that goes into that. I did a lot of that work in graduate school and as a consultant afterwards. So let's talk about the learning objectives here. First, we're going to recognize current trends regarding foreign direct investment, otherwise known as FDI. So what are the trends that are going on today? We're going to explain the different theories of FDI, understand how political ideology shapes the government's attitudes. Does the government actually want FDI or not? Describe the benefits and costs to home and then the host country. Explain the range of policy instruments that governments use to influence FDI and to encourage it or discourage it. And then identify the implications for managers of the theory and government processes, government policies associated with FDI. So again, how does it all apply to you as a manager? So the opening case I love because it's a success story about JCB in India. They're a British manufacturer in the construction industry, and their strategy was to enter a joint venture with an Indian engineering conglomerate called Escorts in 1979. And they had to do that because at the time, the Indian government required that all foreign direct investment had to have a venture with an Indian company. So there were government regulations and high tariffs that forced them to do that. They couldn't necessarily just simply ship their construction equipment to India. And they couldn't just open up their own company in India because, as I said, the government had a rule against that. So JCB looked to gain an advantage over global competitors by having this partnership with Escorts. Then in 1999, the rules changed and JCB renegotiated the terms with Escorts to take full advantage of the change in the government regulations. That no longer did the Indian government require this joint venture, and that JCB felt like they would rather go wholeheartedly, I guess, with 2 feet into India, because if they were in a joint venture, then potentially Escorts could steal some of their trade secrets, steal some of their ideas, steal some of their manufacturing tricks, etc. So the joint venture became a wholly owned subsidiary. They bought Escorts out of their stock. And then they soon expanded into the US, Brazil, and China because they were so successful with their new market in India. So, and by 2008, JCB's foreign investment was bearing fruit, and they are a huge competitor to companies such as Caterpillar. So a really nice story of how they, were forced to start small, but then they renegotiated their deal, and now it's become a huge success story. So what is FDI? FDI is when a firm invests directly in new facilities to produce or market in a foreign country. FDI occurs when there is a 10% interest taken in a foreign business entity, and it can be by an individual, or mostly likely it's by an organization. And a firm engaged in FDI is called a multinational enterprise, also known as an MNE. Let's hop on to the next slide. There are different types of foreign direct investment in the world economy. Some important terms to know. First is the amount of FDI undertaken over a given time. So this is the amount of money or investment that flows throughout the investment. Then there's the stock, the accumulated value of the foreign-owned assets. The outflows, the flow of FDI out of a country, most likely back to the host country, back to the home country, and then the inflows of FDI into the host country. What are some trends? Both the flow and the stock of FDI in the world economy have increased over the last 30 years. So as we'll see in the next slide, a really nice graph of how this is helping move society forward overall. FDI flow has grown rapidly, more than world trade and world output. at the same time, firms still fear protectionist policies. So, so they, it's a way to this is a way for them to circumvent trade barriers. They're afraid that if they would just, like JCB, just ship their finished product into a particular country, there would be tariffs and subsidies and different things that would stop them from making a nice profit. But if they actually do production in that host country, then they can overcome some of these protectionist policies. The shift towards democratic political institutions and free market economies also encourages FDI. So this is a main idea, a main theory that economists have seen over the recent decades. And then the last thing is that globalization prompts firms to have a significant presence in many regions of the world. So this is like now like the ABCs. This is a very basic principle of large organizations, is that they want to take their business abroad. And that they see the whole world as their market. And they also want, so they not only want to sell products abroad, but they want to also have the production close to their consumers. Okay, I got everything on that slide. Let's go ahead and hop on to the next one. As I mentioned, there's a really cool graph when it shows the FDI outflows starting in 1990. So after the wall came down in Berlin, that we were here at about 250 billion. And then it went up and it finally spiked here up at 2.2 trillion in 2007. And now it hovers here around 1.4 trillion. But obviously you can see just over 30 years, it's increased quite a bit. And so a really nice way to see that everything's moving forward in the big picture. So what's the direction of FDI now? Historically, FDI has been directed at developed nations. So the US and the EU were favorable targets because they were large. At least the US is large, it's wealthy, has a stable economy. But more recently, as we'll see again and again in this course, developing nations have been recipients of FDI. So Eastern Europe, as we've spoken about, right, the Czech Republic, Poland, Romania, Bulgaria, they are ripe for, or they were ripe for federal, for foreign direct investment. After the wall came down, there was a lot of opportunity for US companies and multinational companies to go into those worlds. Southeast Asia, particularly China, as we see again and again, have also received significant inflows. Latin America slowly is also emerging as an important region for FDI. It comes and it goes, right? We've seen in this course already, right? Argentina did well for a couple of decades now, not so much. I'm sure it'll come back again because that's been a consistent cycle over the last century. Venezuela, not such a ripe country for FDI, but Mexico is doing pretty well. Costa Rica is doing great. Panama is doing fantastic. China is becoming a major investor now in Africa, as we see in the case study of the previous chapter, that especially in the extraction industries. So as we see that China's population is growing very, very quickly and very nicely, they have a lot of young people. And so Africa's population is growing. And so China thinks that it could be a great place for investment, and especially for things that we mine. FDI flows by region, 95 to 2019. We're looking at developed nations. So as we said earlier on the previous slide, it used to be the US and Europe that would get a lot of the investment money. So those are the blue parts of the bar that are blue here. And then you'll see the developing nations, pretty consistent, but now in the 2005 or so, getting bigger and bigger and almost as big as the blue bars. And what I love, my favorite part of the world, one of my favorite parts of the world, is the transition economies. And that is Eastern Europe for the most part. So as you can see, very, very small, but as they set up infrastructure and governments that were stable, by 2003, booming. So really nice place to invest. As I said, I was in the Czech Republic in the 90s, and it was really exciting to see all these McKinsey people, Deloitte people, kind of help to advise and set up a situation where they could welcome more investment. So where does the FDI come from? Since World War II, the U.S. has been the largest source for foreign investment, for sure. Some other important sources are the UK, the Netherlands, France, Germany, and Japan, also wealthier nations. And as I said, the Chinese firm recently emerged as major foreign investors. As we also see here in California, a lot of Chinese people are buying up real estate, investing in lots of different infrastructure opportunities. So here are the cumulative outflows from 1999 to 2019. As you can see, the US being a big one. Lots of US firms going abroad. Also the UK doing decently well in line with Netherlands, Germany, Japan, France. But what's so interesting is China has just gotten into the game, right, in the last maybe decade or so, and has already caught up to those European countries from 99. So they're moving quickly, obviously. So forms of FDI, acquisitions versus what are called greenfield investments. What is a greenfield investment? It's establishing new operations in a foreign country. Acquisitions, though, are attractive because they are quicker to execute than greenfield investments, having to start from scratch. They're easier and less risky for a firm to acquire than build them from the ground up. And firms believe that they can then increase, hopefully, the efficiency of an acquired unit by transferring capital, technology, and management skills, right? As we've spoken about a lot in this course, that is a key component of the West, that we've really been working on our management skills through business schools and education, and just the movement from a manufacturing country, handful of countries, to a service economy. All right, I'm going to stop here for part one of this chapter, and let you click on a second video for part two.